Whether you like it or not, networking is essential to your career and business success and growth. There are many different ways of networking that require you to invest time and energy to nurture the relationship, such as through social media, virtual one-on-one chats, or attending in-person events. Networking online versus networking in person are totally different experience and vibes. Networking one-on-one versus networking in a group setting at an event require different approaches. I recently came back from New York for the LinkedIn Instructor reunion event and had an incredible time meeting my fellow LinkedIn instructors that I admire and so inspired by for the very first time. It was like meeting celebrities. If you dread going to networking events, or if you feel anxious, or if you find it awkward to network in a group setting, then today's show on how to talk to anyone at a networking event is for you. You'll learn effective ways to start, hold, and end a conversation in a room full of strangers to make the most out of the networking opportunity. I'll be chatting with fellow LinkedIn instructors whom I just met a week ago, AJ Eckstein and Dean Karrel, who'll be joining me on the show very soon. Hello and welcome to the Dare to Differentiate show. Whether you're tuning in live or watching the replay, I am so delighted that you're here. Comment to let us know, where are you tuning in from? I'm your host, Diana YK Chan, LinkedIn top voice and founder of My Markability, where I help you stand out, get hired, and earn more. All right, so speaking of a client win with regards to networking, last year I had a client who made a huge career pivot, changing from entrepreneurship to corporate marketing through networking. I supported her for about a year and a half. You know, when we first started, she really needed to get clear on what she was going to target and how she was going to break into the corporate career there, as she's been having her own marketing agency for over 5 years. And through a series of networking, she met like probably 100 people throughout the course of the 1.5 journey there. She landed an opportunity through one of my executive clients. And the way they met was through a networking event that they attended that I hosted there. And since then, they, stay connected. And a few months later, an opportunity unfolded. And so that really speaks about the power of networking and attending events. If you need help with your career transition and job search, feel free to book a complimentary call with me on my website. Follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. All right, so let me check in with the audience. Who's in the house today? All right, we have Musa from Nigeria, Alpha from Houston, Candace from Philadelphia, amazing, Melba from Toronto, Bowen from Sweden. Oh my goodness, we have an international audience here. Good morning, Maria from Richmond Hill, really close to where I live here in Markham. And we have Saudi Arabia, amazing, a very international audience here. Okay, so here's what to expect. Today's agenda, we're gonna have some quick intro rapid fire questions with our guest. Then we're gonna highlight a little bit about the LinkedIn Instructor reunion event experience of what it was like. And then we're gonna go into some practical advice on how to network effectively in person. If you're excited and you're here, type in a +1 and let us know that you're excited and that you're here. Okay. Some housekeeping. Replays will be available on my YouTube channel, where we'll be adding timestamps later on for easy viewing. I want to encourage you to click like and comment anytime, share your thoughts, key learnings, and questions, engage with one another as well. And then I like to also raise the vibrational energy there, is to show your appreciation. Share your kind words to support our guest speakers here. Type in #GoAJ and GoDean. Type in that there to give them some supported love. And then also a special shout out to my assistant, Jan Del Carlo Catalonia in Philippines, who's also supporting me today with engaging with you all and displaying our captions here. Okay, so let me do a quick introduction here. So AJ, who we just met last week, a week ago in New York at the Empire State Building. AJ is a career coach and strategy consultant who also hosts the top-rated podcast, The Final Round, where he interviews recruiters and hiring managers on how to ace interviews. Dean Karrel is an expert in executive coaching, career mentoring, sales training, and leadership development. Dean is also the author of the book, Mastering the Basics, Simple Lessons for Achieving Success in Business. All right. Are you guys excited? Oh my goodness. I see our friend Amira is here as well. Amazing, amazing. Let's welcome our guest speakers to the show here. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Good to see you both.
Thank you for
Good.
having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today. We literally just met in person a week ago, and both of you followed up with me after the event and we connected. And I remember just a couple of days ago that I said, hey, are you interested in coming to my show? And both of you said yes immediately. So I really want to acknowledge you for saying yes to this opportunity. And I know we're going to have a lot of fun today.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's one of the best pieces of advice just to start off with, Diana, is most people don't follow up, right? And the whole point of a networking event is to continue those relationships. So I think that is the first what everybody should be doing is follow up with those people that you met at that event or that place, location, to see what opportunities may come from it in the future.
Absolutely. Follow up, follow up, follow up. And I know, Dean, this is something you're used to being in sales as well, the importance of follow up, right?
It's not rocket science. If somebody has a question or they want to say hello or they want to check in with you, follow up immediately. The first one there usually succeeds.
Yeah, isn't like their stats like 7 to 8 times follow up to close the sale there, to close the deal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know
Amazing.
that well.
So we're going to start off with some rapid fire questions to get to know you guys a little bit more there. So first off here is, where are you based? We'll start with AJ.
So it's a tricky question because I've been traveling a ton. So I'll give a multi-part answer. I would say been mostly in between San Francisco, Austin, Texas, and Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. So you've been traveling a lot.
Bouncing. And actually, I'm in New York City at the moment. So been traveling a bunch for work and to see friends. So spend some time in each of those locations.
Yeah. Where's home for you?
Home is on the West Coast right now.
West Coast. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. And what about you, Dean?
Well, I live now in northern New Jersey, about 25 miles from New York City. And interestingly, one of the attendees today I see is from Greenwich, Connecticut, where ironically, that's where I grew up. So a little networking tip is when you see where people are from or where they're attending or where they may be speaking from, it's a great way to start a conversation. So that person from Greenwich, please reach out and check in with me when we're done.
Amazing, right? Finding that common ground to connect. Speaking of that, I literally just met another fellow LinkedIn instructor at one all hands meeting the other day who's from Toronto, and we connected instantly. So that's such great advice. What's your area of expertise?
I guess I can start that off, Dean. I would say area of expertise right now, starting with consulting, given that I work in strategy and consulting, primarily for large media and tech clients working in product marketing and product strategy, and then also just recruiting, careers, and job search.
And my background is in the publishing industry. I spent more than 3 decades with some really large global publishing companies. And I left that about 7 years ago to do a new path of my career. So I do career coaching and I do sales training with the small companies. So I like to tell the story. It's a great example, whether you're 25, 35, 45, or 55, you can change the paths and direction you go with in your career. And that's what I've done. So, and I love what I'm doing now. And I'm thoroughly energized with the experience and path I'm now on.
Oh, I love that story, that it's still possible to make a career pivot. And what's the name of your latest LinkedIn course?
Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, I'll kick us off, Dean. So the latest course is Nano Tips for Professional Networking. So it's more of a bite-sized course that you are encouraged to watch on your phone. So it's mobile first vertical video. It's about 10 bite-sized, very short videos. So the whole course is about 10 minutes and just rapid fire advice covering and debunking the myths, the do's, the don'ts, very similar to what we're doing today, but just trying to figure out how we can get people to network effectively. Because I think a lot of career institutions, a lot of advice out there is not the best. And we're trying to change that and get people to get to where they want to go.
Amazing. And I have to tell you, when I saw your course, I was like, oh, that's a course I'm going to create. I got to come talk to you when I come to New York. Amazing. All right, Dean, your turn.
Well, I like both of your courses. I love these nano course approach, the quick tips, quick ideas, less than 30 minutes. And both of you have great nano courses confidence, yours and presenting, Diana, and yours, AJ, on networking. You got some great tips in a short period of time. Mine are a little longer, and they're in the sales category. And my latest course is a course on handling objections. And I have 15 courses in the LinkedIn Learning Library that cover everything from the basics of learning how to sell, because everybody is scared of selling, to some of the more advanced topics like how to close sales, which is what everybody fears.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, 15 courses. Isn't that amazing? Can we give some like clapping emojis here? And Dean, I've been following you for years, I have to tell you, because of all your courses. I've been following your work as well. So you've really inspired me as well with all the courses that you have.
Thank you. I'm glad. Did you pass the assessment test? That's the key, though.
I know there's tests in those courses, like the nano courses don't have that.
Right.
What's an interesting highlight from this year in 2022?
Dean, do you want to take that one first?
Well, I'll take that one first. For me, and again, I spent my whole career working with people face to face, being in offices, traveling. And, I used to fly across the country at a moment's notice. Those days are over where, we don't travel as much as we used to. But I love now the fact that I'm able to go back into New York City and see clients face to face. I'm able to go around the metropolitan New York area and talk with clients face to face. Yes, we can do it by Zoom. We could do it by Teams, and it does work. And we made it work over the past 2 years. But for me, there's nothing better than being face to face with somebody. So for the highlight for me this year has been the fact that I've been able to communicate and look people in the eyes and see them in person.
Oh, that's amazing to hear that. That's amazing. Yeah, you're a connector. What about you, AJ?
Definitely echo that, Dean. There's nothing better, especially after working with someone or networking with someone virtually, to meet them in person, like we did at the LinkedIn Learning Instructors event in New York City, which was so great. And we'll talk about, obviously, all of the best things from that event. But I would say the two highlights, at least for me, in 2022, one is more career focus, one's more personal. So on the career focus side, ending season 1 of the Final Round podcast, interviewing about 30 recruiters that have been on the show from all of these different companies and getting about 30 hours of career insight to help our audience advance past the Final Round interview. So that's probably one of our favorite highlights. And then more of a personal highlight is completing an Olympic triathlon that I actually finished about 2 weeks ago. Did a ton of training for it. And it was definitely took a lot out of me, a lot of training. Had to eat right, stretch, everything, get right, the right sleep. But those are two of my highlights for 22.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. Congratulations on that. That's amazing. I'll share a little bit of my highlight here. So this year for me, the highlight, going back to in person, the personal highlight was definitely going to Paris recently in August for a women's mastermind. And it made me realize how much I missed the in-person. I was there for 10 days and I really had some meaningful conversations, and I transformed as well as an individual. So that was a highlight. And the other was traveling to Cancun with my family for 10 days. So taking 3 weeks off in August was huge. I feel so refreshed and energized. And a professional highlight is definitely launching the LinkedIn course this year, the Nano course on presenting with confidence. So that was a huge highlight, along with being recognized as LinkedIn top voice there. So awesome. So my last rapid fire question is, what fulfills you?
I can take this one first. I would say it's taken some time to really figure out what you are fulfilled by, because I don't think you are just born and you know exactly what gives you joy. But I would say connecting people. And what I mean by connecting people is that could be one friend to another friend in a new city, and they become friends. And when you end up leaving that city, like I'm in New York right now, connected to 2 of my good friends who just moved here, and then seeing them go to dinner and go out together without me being there. I really find joy in connecting people, just, socially, with the relationships, things like that. And the second thing is also just in their career. If you can connect the right recruiter or hiring manager or company or HR rep to that right candidate, right? It's no cost to me other than just a little bit of time to send that intro email. But obviously the return that they get is exponential, and that can propel their career. So I would say being the connector is something that I've leaned into more, and how I can connect these two dots. And as you build your network, you're just more of a matchmaker, both career-wise and socially.
This is why you and I connected, AJ, because I'm a connector as well. I love making introductions and I love endorsing other people. And I wonder, we hit it off right away. Now I see as you share this. What about 100%. You, Dean?
Well, I think that's probably why the three of us are all together this morning, because all three of us thrive on that. And What fulfills me also is I am very honest. I'm very authentic, and I like telling people that I don't have all the answers all the time, and we all have insecurities, and we all get nervous, and we all doubt ourselves sometimes. And it's funny. Even at the networking event and the LinkedIn reunion, a number of instructors said to me, "Oh, Dean, you're such a great networker. You're always so confident and outgoing." Well, I'm not like that all the time. And I do have insecurities. And I like letting people know that I've had those, struggles just like everybody else. And that helps other people, overcome the obstacles and difficulties that they may have. So that honesty, I think that I like to talk to people about is something that fulfills me.
Yeah, amazing. That's amazing there. So we have two quick questions from the audience before we dive into the next part here is AJ, Elmira asked you, what did you do to train for the triathlon? And how does that training relate or align to your approach to career life and networking?
So I think the triathlon is a really, and it doesn't have to be a triathlon. It could be a marathon, a half marathon, a relay race, just some sort of goal that you want to do physically. I think a lot of it, and the reason why I do these things, I think it translates very well to what you do for your career. So, when I'm in my groove and I'm like today, for instance, today before this live stream, I went on a run at 6 a.m. with a couple of friends, right? And just really staying committed, determined, trying to stay ambitious. And a lot of that translates to then when I start work, I feel like I'm ready to tackle the day. I already accomplished something. So I think you have to get a routine going. You have to stay committed, and finding a community of people who are trying to achieve that same goal, that same mission is super important. And the same thing if you're job searching, right? If you're trying to level up in your career, finding other people who are doing similar things, or even us three, right? Trying to build our communities, our audience, our brands, and trying to help others. So I think, to answer Almira's question, finding that community, doing similar things, staying consistent, and then making sure you understand why you're doing something. Because the biggest thing why I wanted to do it, obviously wanted to stay physically fit, but really wanted to translate to my career and my professional journey.
Amazing. Amazing. And so, Dean, I have another question for you from the audience is, could you suggest some books to tackle sales adversity and best read for online money making for service-based AutoCAD design engineer? Oh my goodness, there's a boatload here. Who sell service by creating engineering designs?
Well, I think the question is, are there books that can focus on specific industries on sales? Yeah. And one of the things you have to be always concerned with is there are thousands of books on sales and thousands of ideas and thousands of approaches, methodologies of approaching the sales process. And that's where people get overwhelmed because you overread, you overthink, you overanalyze. And the trick is, I think what's more important initially in sales is to find a good manager, a good mentor who can lead you and direct you in the right direction. So it's not, so to speak, the thousands of books out there and finding that best one. Find one, read one, and get a couple of tidbits from each book. And, it's a $20, 20-pound investment, no matter where you live, for a book. And you can buy it electronically or in print form. And that $20 investment, if you can find 2 or 3 great ideas, then it's an investment that pays a lot of dividends. So look on your local bookstore, go see it on the shelf, or go on an online account and pick 1 or 2 books from their bestseller list and start there.
Amazing.
And also one other thing to add to that, if it's okay, Dean and Diana, I think a lot of people in the audience might be saying, oh, well, I'm not pursuing a career path in sales. I don't want to be a BDR, SDR. My path is not sales. And that's what I originally thought. But then you come to realize that everything that you do, no matter what career path you choose, is sales. Even getting a job is selling yourself. Even networking is selling yourself. So being a great salesperson is actually a really good set of tools to have. So definitely take Dean's course and, read some of those sales books and just practice selling yourself, because everything you do again in life is sales.
I can't agree more, especially handling rejections and objections, right? So I totally agree with that. Okay, so let's move into part 2, where we're going to talk about the highlights of the LinkedIn Instructor Reinvent. For those who are just tuning in, welcome to the show on how to talk to anyone at a networking event. We're going to talk about the highlights from our recent experience where we just met last week at this event there. And then we're going to give you some best advice on networking. So let's start off with what were the highlights from this event. And perhaps what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some pictures to give you guys some idea for those who are, just tuning in, wondering what it was about. I'm going to share with you some pictures here. So this was the event. I think there was about 50 plus of us, was it? 50, 60 of us at the event. This was like our group picture later on in the evening. There was another group picture here. Let me see here if I can move into the next slide here. Yeah, this was the end of the night. There was about 10 of us left. Like AJ was still there. We all decided to go for more drinks and chat more. This was like, what time was it? It was already 6:30, 7 o'clock already. After 3 hours of networking, right? AJ, we were still energized. And we decided to go to a hotel for some drinks. And we stayed there for another almost 2 hours. Like I know it was past 9 o'clock that we stayed out. Like that day, I networked from 10 to 9. Like I was out all day. And we were still all excited to go out there. This is another group picture. Amara, who's my content manager, we had like a group chat, like a group chatting to get to know each other. And then lastly, I had a picture, a selfie with AJ here. So why don't we talk? What were some of your highlights? What did you love about this experience?
Well, for me, it's just the fact I got a chance to meet people face to face who I've talked to for whether it was 6 months or a number of years. And, from Gemma Roberts to Aaron Shrimpton, Chris Croft, Miles Croft, AJ, you talk about, triathlons, Tatiana Kolovu, who was a big all-star instructor. She's a triathlete, and, seeing her in person, you can understand the energy, on a Zoom call or watching their courses. But when you see it and able to experience face-to-face, it is really terrific. I think the other thing for me was also people who I've watched their courses and I have never met before. So it's Jim Rogers. He does courses on construction, which are far from my field of expertise, but he is so engaging and so terrific. And to actually meet him in person was a real treat, because what you see is what you get from his courses and in person. So for me, that was the real highlight, meeting people that I've talked to for a while and able to see and spend some time with them face to face.
Yeah, that's amazing. What about you, AJ?
And I definitely echo that, Dean. And I would say it is one of my favorite things, especially in this virtual world that we live in, is meeting those people that you meet online in person. And I guess, a quick example is I actually just made a LinkedIn post about this on my profile, that I met someone on LinkedIn who turned out to be a fellow podcaster. We hit it off, connected on some other social media apps, and fast forward a couple months, and I got invited to go to Nicaragua on a surf trip with him, his family, and some of his friends, all because we met, online. So I think those in-person meetups are things that I would really look forward to, and traveling all the way across the country to come to this event. So definitely meeting people in person. I would say meeting our content managers. I know Diana, I think we have the same content manager, and I think Almira is in the chat and she's watching live. So Almira, shout out to Almira, and Zoe, also people we've worked with on the content side who work at LinkedIn. Great to meet them in person. And then someone said a great quote that really stuck with me about this event and all of the LinkedIn Learning instructor community. It's like we're all coworkers at the same company, but we never really work hand in hand, and we've never met each other. So coming into that one space and saying, wait a second, we have so much in common, but we work with our content managers rather than directly with each other, but we all support each other with different content on LinkedIn, and seeing those little bubbles, your little profile picture actually come to life was one of my favorite highlights of the event.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. Yeah, for me, I just really love the vibe and energy. I just felt so warm, welcoming, and just positive. There was a lot of that support. Like I loved when Dean came up to me to say hi, because I reached out to him like a few days before, like, I'm coming, looking forward to meeting you. And I just love how Dean just came to say hello. It was just a brief hello, but it just made me feel so warm and welcoming. And just even like AJ, like I love in our small group chat that you were always hyping each other up, like, so-and-so and so good at this. And I was just like so impressed of the group of the people that I got to meet. And everyone was just so supportive. I really love that through those little moments of conversations, someone would say, like Tatiana, like she's like, oh, have you met Selena, for example? Like we were talking about like my course on confidence. She's coming with a book, and she made an introduction for me to go say hello. And I've been following Selena for a long time as well. So I was so excited to get to talk to her. And so those little moments that it's hard to do virtually, that you're able to do in person very quickly, to make these instant connection, build those instant rapport, and take selfies. Like I love taking pictures. So I just love that I was able to take some great pictures with people there. Yeah,
it's an impressive
awesome
group. I mean, we're very fortunate. We work with some really impressive people, from entry-level people in their industries to PhDs to professors to people who have been trainers for years. You know, the LinkedIn Learning Library has a really impressive list of instructors. So I count my blessings all the time of being able to work with this organization and people like this, and getting a chance now working and meeting with you two.
Or even Dean, people, international speakers like Diana, who's spoken to the UN and has more speaking events coming up. I mean, it's, you know, and I made another post about this. Like, I walked into this event and, you know, I definitely had a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? I mean, there's industry thought leaders, best-selling authors, university professors like Tatiana, people with, you know, 50+ LinkedIn Learning courses, huge influencers, millions of followers. And it's like, man, what can you offer? But everybody has their unique story, and just being able to help and support and uplift others.
Absolutely. Everybody has their unique story. That's a great statement, AJ. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a great segue to some of these questions to offer for those. I want to hear from our audience, like, you know, how do you feel when it comes to attending a networking event? Do you feel excited or do you feel anxious? Tell us a little bit of those emotions that comes to when coming to like a networking event. And let's talk about right now in terms of what are some of those networking myths that you hear, that you experience? What are some of the common myths? And I know, AJ, you alluded to this in your course as well.
I can kick us off. So I would say one of the biggest myths, and I remember especially when I was a student in college, you feel like you have nothing to offer, and you feel like networking is very transactional. So if I reach out to Dean because I want to work in sales, I feel like I have to give him something. If I reach out to Diana, what do I have to give? And oftentimes when you're starting out in your career, maybe you're a little bit younger, you feel like you have nothing to give. But one of the things that I always tell myself, even now when I'm networking, is you're giving the other person an opportunity to give back. Because I always tell myself that the other person that you're networking with, that's giving up time out of their day to help you, to chat with you, they're also networking, or they have networked to get to where they are today. And they're also networking to get to where they want to go. So networking is not transactional. It's a huge myth. People think that it needs to be, you know, I give you something, you give me something. It's not a bartering system. There's no payout. It should just be to help others. I also think that, you know, networking is synonymous with job searching. And once you land your job, you're done networking. But the craziest thing that I've learned after getting my recent entry-level job is that I actually do more networking now once I have my job to grow in my career than I did to even get my job in the first place. So, Dean, you're gonna love this, and you know the sales acronym ABC, always be closing. I have an acronym for networking. It's always be networking, because I don't think that networking has to happen at a networking event or at a LinkedIn Learning Instructor event or at a career fair. It could happen at Starbucks, at the library, on the street, getting to a taxi, and even at the airport. I mean, if you just put yourself out there and start chatting with people, and instead of being closed off with, I know I'm wearing earphones right now, but you know, instead of being in your own world, try to be more open and just literally talk to anybody, and you never know what they may bring. And so many opportunities have arisen because I've been more open to meeting people and networking. So I think the second myth is that networking only happens in certain times, especially just in the job search, but networking should always be happening if you can tell yourself to put yourself out there. And I think one of the last things I would say for networking is that you can network with anybody. And I agree that you could network with anybody. But one quote that I love to say is that there's no bad person to network with, but there are definitely better people to network with to try to tailor what you want to do. It's kind of similar to if you're searching for a job, right? There's no bad job to apply to, but there are definitely better jobs to apply to that align closer to what you want to do. So let's say that you're pursuing a sales track, right? And there's 3 people in the room. There's Dean, Diana, and AJ, right? Can Diana and AJ offer advice, guidance? We can be great people in your network, of course. But if you chat with Dean, Dean has a lot more to offer in that sales track. So and we'll talk about research and some tips in a second, but if you do your research prior, you should have some target people that you want to speak to, because Dean's probably going to be your best advocate and the best person to network with in that setting. So I think those are the 3 things that I would recommend in this networking myths and tips for advice section.
Amazing. Anything you want to add, Dean?
Well, I'm going to recommend people watch AJ's course. It's 20 minutes and it's got great tips. I watched it the other day, and it has all the basic tips of how to network. I'd also recommend, AJ, you mentioned and Diana, your content managers on this call, Almira Pratt, P-R-A-T-T. She posted something, I think yesterday, the day before, about her fear of networking and going into a room We all experience it. I think one of the myths is that some people are just born to network. I love when people say that to me. Dean, you network all the time. I walk into a big room and I get intimidated just like everybody else. And it's like, with, for 35 years of doing sales training, when I bring up the word networking, immediately that can suck the energy out of a room because everybody groans, because we're all a little intimidated by going into a room with a lot of people. And so you have to have those tricks of how you get involved and how you integrate and work with others. And we're going to talk about that during this discussion today. Yeah. But I think one of the myths is that it's not easy sometimes, and it's okay. The word networking scares people. It's almost like you come up a word with being social. I just think a lot of it comes down just to being able to say hello or finding your comfort zone that Almira talked about in her post on LinkedIn. And, so the myths are, it's not easy sometimes, but you can overcome them. And again, watch AJ's courses.
Let's just watch his course. Then we'll be done here. You know what? I have to tell you, networking as a coach as well, through working with clients one-on-one, it's one of the most common challenges that people have, whether extrovert or introverts, especially with introverts when it comes to networking. But once we change that perspective, one perspective I like to think about, instead of thinking that you need to ask for help, ask for a job, is really thinking about how can I serve, how can I help, right? And when going back to, it's not transactional, it's all about discovering what you can do for others. It makes it more interesting and fun there. So let's dive into our next question here, is how to best prepare for an in-person networking event. And perhaps I'm going to kick off this because I actually did do some prep, because I actually was a little nervous, being the only Canadian instructor flying in. I was like, oh, I don't know if I know anyone. And one of the things I did was I did check out the list of people who were attending. I read through the list. And after that night, I reached out to people to say hello. Like Dean, I reached out to you. AJ, I reached out to you to say hello. I said my hello before in person, that I'm coming, looking forward to meeting you. And that just gave me at ease, because I felt that when I arrived, I felt like I recognized people. And you recognized me as well, so you came to say hello. So that was one of the best things I felt like I did to eliminate some of that fears or that I don't know anyone at this event.
That goes to the basics of planning and preparation and research, which is chapter 1 of sales. And whether you're in sales, whether you're in marketing, whether you're doing networking or whatever you may be doing, that research gives you the confidence to meet people. Not all 50 people, but you pick out 5 here, 6 there. I did the same thing. I printed out the list of all the attendees, where they're from, what courses that they've done. I can't memorize 50 courses of what everybody has done. But AJ, I knew yours. Diana, I knew yours. I knew the new ones that have come out from Aaron Shrimpton or Gemma Roberts or Chris Croft, whoever it might be. And certainly, Selena's course, I wanted to meet her and see the courses that she's done and her work with TikTok. So that 45 minutes of prep work is so important in networking and so important in sales and so important in making presentations within your corporation. Basics.
The basics, right? Yeah, because you can't talk to everyone. Yeah.
You can't talk to anyone. I would say, just to add, I totally agree. And I did the same thing with researching. Again, there's no bad person to network with, but there are definitely better people that might be better suited to what you are trying to do, career-wise, socially, whatever it may be. Another thing I would advise the audience is make sure you do prep work on yourself. Do you have your story down, right? It's definitely updates every day. Can you tailor it to the event? You have to be able to think on the fly. If I have some sort of sales experience, I'll make sure to talk about that when I hear Dean has a course in sales versus Diana, maybe sales is not as relevant. So your story should not be some canned response that you just memorize word for word the next 30 people that you chat with. It should be a living, breathing, piece of you that you tailor to that person and what they're doing, so that you build those similarities to build that connection that will lead to better networking. So having your story down is super important. I also think you should go and do everything based on goals, right? What would constitute success if you were to leave this event? What do you want to walk away with? Do you want to walk away with 50 emails? Do you want to walk away with 50 new LinkedIn connections? Do you want to walk away getting some FaceTime with the LinkedIn content manager because you want to get a new course out? So everybody's goal is different. And maybe my goal, honestly, was just to go there, enjoy, have fun, meet as many people as I could, and just be open to seeing what opportunities may come from it, literally like this LinkedIn Live and meeting, these two incredible people next to like Diana and Dean. So just ask yourself when you go to these events, what is your goal? And when you walk away, what would make you look back and say, wow, that was a really successful and positive event?
Yeah, that's such great advice about nailing your story. That's something I talk about a lot, like mastering your glowing introduction, because that's the impression that you leave. And I knew actually flying there, I actually wrote down what I wanted to get out of the event. Part of it is really just meeting people. And the other was for me is that I knew that I wanted to also do more speaking. And I want to learn from people who are doing more speaking currently, or who have published books or published a lot of courses. So I prepared also some questions that I want to ask to learn more from that. And that requires preparation. Like, because if you don't know a little bit about the person, it's hard to ask specific questions. So I actually prepare some specific set of questions on my phone to just prompt me to ask those questions there. And like you and I, like AJ, like I knew we had something in common because we worked at the same company before. There were just some little things to find those common ground so that you can hit off right away by preparing there.
And one other thing I want to add, if we can, before we move on to the next topic, there's a fine line between being prepared and then being over prepared. And this is the same thing with interviews, right? You don't want to come off so polished to the point where, Dean is the hiring manager is like, I don't know about this person. They have responses for everything and they've memorized things word for word. It's the same thing with a networking event. You don't want to come and say, Dean, I watched every second of your course. I memorized the transcript. You're from XYZ location. And it's almost just like, whoa, that's a little bit too much. So I would advise people as well, you want to be prepared, but also stay fresh, stay organic, be nimble, be able to be agile and flexible on the fly. You don't want to come off as, running to that one person that's your target and then just regurgitating what exactly you were going to say, bring out a script of questions, like just, still be yourself, but come prepared.
Yeah. That's a great advice there. So let's move on to the next question is how to introduce yourself effectively. So going back to telling your story, we've heard a lot of different versions out there that night. Like, what are some things that you felt was interesting to you, or what's your formula to introducing?
I think that's what scares people. You walk into a room and you say, how am I going to introduce myself? And what am I going to say? And you see 50 people staring at you and you feel self-conscious. And you say, do I get some food? Do I get a soda? Where do I go? And for me, it's being selective. Find one person. And don't overthink this. It's say hello. That's not rocket science. Hi, my name is Dean Karrel. I'm a career and executive coach. I do sales courses with LinkedIn Learning, and I live in northern New Jersey. Nice to meet you. It's like, how hard is that? But it does take a deep breath to find that first person to go to. And I think for me, that's the advice I give. Don't look at 50 people or 100 people in a room. Find the one person. There's somebody just like you who's as nervous as you, who's standing off to the side, who's trying to navigate also. That's the person you go to and say, good afternoon. My name is Dean Karrel. It's a pleasure to meet you. And it goes from there. That's a basics of conversation.
Yeah.
And I would say to add on to that, obviously everybody at this LinkedIn Learning Instructor event is probably creating content on LinkedIn, has a LinkedIn profile, and the only way they got invited is that Almira and Zoe invited them. But the second thing is that they launched a course. So my opening line to everybody was, hey, great to meet you. It's awesome to be here. We're in the Empire State Building. It says, it's such an honor to be here. I feel blessed to just get this, this invitation and these incredible people. And just the easiest thing to start with, what everybody has in common is, what's your course? They answer. You answer, and then you see where you can take it from there. But that's probably the opening line. And, if you go to a career fair at a university, a lot of the employee representatives that these companies, especially the larger companies, will bring to, let's say I went to University of Southern California, USC, all of these career fairs, the employee reps are usually from that school. So starting with USC, talking about what you're majoring in and where you live and all those things, you want to start with some common ground. And then once you get different pieces of the person, then start to figure out where you want to take the conversation.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I think where you're getting at, J2, is really the icebreaker. Like, even before introducing yourself, what's the icebreaker to have that common ground to instantly connect? And I think that's so important. Like, it's just, to me, I feel like it's really a big part of your warmth and energy. Like saying hello, that you feel excited. Like even Dean, like I know you came to say hello. I felt I felt welcome. That's how I felt, even though it was a so brief moment. And how do we make each other feel has a huge impact in terms of the impression that you leave. So I think that that's first thing first, like before even introducing yourself, is like, how are we showing up and how do we make each other's feel? And one thing that I talk about for introducing yourself is that besides just talking about your past of what you've done, talk about something interesting of like, what are you looking forward to or what are you working on, so that you can maybe also like mastermind a little bit to brainstorm and get some advice from each other. So for example, I shared that I'm giving a talk to the UN like next week, like next Wednesday. And AJ was super excited for me. He was my hype man there. He was telling everyone about this. But what I loved about it afterwards was that we also talked about some ideas, like, how do I share this story as well? And we were able to brainstorm and support each other as well. So beyond just talk about your path, talk about like things that you're working on, what you're excited about, to maybe seek some advice and seek some insights from each other there.
Goes to the point, it's about the other person. It's not about you. And that's the key thing of sales is, it's you're working with a customer. It's not talking about yourself. You want to learn about them. And that's the same with networking. No one wants to hear my story. I want to hear about you, AJ. So tell me about yourself. I mean, that's a basic equation of networking and of conversation. So that's a very important point.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a question here from Mohammed. Do we need to be intentionally selective? Because select, I guess, in terms of meeting people.
I can start and take this one, and then feel free, Dean or Diana, to add on or to disagree. But I would say that you should, again, have some target people that you want to meet. But if you meet somebody that's not in that quote unquote target list, you shouldn't say, oh, you're Diana. Oh, but you're not on my list. I got to run and go talk to that person. Right. So yes, by the end of the event, you do want to meet and chat and network with those target people. Ideally, of course, you're never going to get everybody. But again, you don't have to be so intentional to the point where you could see someone looking at their list on their phone or a printed out paper and they only say, Dean, oh, there he is. Sorry, I can't talk to you, Diana. I got to go talk to this other person. So do it in a respectful and organic way, and still meet people that maybe are not in your lane, because you never know what could happen in the future. But have that target list is still very helpful.
Yeah, it's good advice. But it also goes back to, if there are 50 people in a room, you're not going to meet all 50. What you're trying to come away with is a couple of people that you had a good conversation with, and maybe there's some extra things you can do and follow up on. And you never know, you might find 2 or 3 others that are bonus. And again, it's not, don't make it a game, make it a conversation. And I think, and not every event is going to be perfect. We went to one that was really outstanding. We've all been to ones where like, wow, this is tough. Yeah. So it's that happens.
Yeah, that's such a great point that, there are events where you just don't feel great in them. But I think the one that we were part of was great. Like the energy was amazing, that people wanted to continue to chat afterwards. So absolutely. I like to have an open mind. Like, even though I have my intention and people I want to meet, you just never know like who you'd meet. Like for me, like I was so delighted to meet Tatiana. She was part of that group, the breakout group that we had, and it was just fabulous, like to meet people, like other instructors that we met, to have these unexpected conversations there. Right. So my next question here is, what are some great conversational starters? So I know AJ talked a little bit about icebreakers. What are some other great conversational starters there? I know the key here is really finding common ground. That's what it really is. What are some tips or questions?
It goes back to the research part. Again, even for today, as you say, you're from Toronto. You talked about Martin Waxman, who's a LinkedIn learning instructor who's from Toronto. I used to work with a company that had an office in Toronto, Diana, and we have about 75. I have 75 connections in Toronto, and I'm trying to figure out who exactly you might know also. And AJ, on your profile, you said you're from, let's guess at one point you were in Austin. Is that correct? Yeah. So there's Kim Kaup, who's a LinkedIn learning instructor, and Sarah Canaday, who's a LinkedIn learning instructor. So those are ways you can develop connections and develop conversations. And, it's looking at their profiles. You can learn so much in this day and age. The old statement, 6 degrees of separation, that's no longer in play. It's really 3 degrees in this day and age. And you could find some connection with anybody, where you're from, where you live. How did I start out today? There was somebody, again, attending here from Greenwich, Connecticut, where I grew up. So there's always some connection or something that is a talking point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such great advice. I'm going to share a quick story. I met Melody Wilding, one of the other fellow instructors. And when I checked out her profile, I saw that she has her book, Trust Yourself. And I actually have the book right here. My client got it for me, Trust Yourself. Wow. That was a conversation start. I'm like, oh my God, I have your book.
Oh my goodness.
And that's how we started the conversation. And because of that, like, I'm bringing her onto the show next month. And I shared with her, like, I actually recently did a photo shoot in the summer where I was holding her book and she couldn't believe it. She was so excited. And that was part of her, breaking the ice, that I have your book. And she was so excited. And I remember, like, I was checking our conversation history. She actually a year ago reached out to me that she wanted to send her book to me as a gift. And then a client sent it to me as a gift. So little things like that. It's a great way to connect with people there. Or someone, who did I meet? Was it Chris Croft. He told me that he watched my entire course, and that was a conversation starter for us to talk about of some of the tips and all that, to exchange ideas, little things that you pick up on to have a conversation.
Excellent advice.
Anything else you want to add in conversation starters? Yeah, I know. I wanted to. Someone wrote here that they dread having these conversations, like networking conversations, and it can seem awkward. I saw someone earlier that they dread having it. It could seem awkward, and to me, so how do we show up? Do we show up as curious and interested? I think that was also in your course, AJ, about be interested and be interesting, right? That you want to be interested in others, show curiosity, ask some questions, but also be interesting, that people want to learn more about you so that you can have that ongoing conversation there. So that follow-up to this, and I want to hear from the audience. We have an audience here still that, what are you learning so far? We got a lot of, like, these little golden nuggets that we're dropping. Type in the comment, let us know, what are you learning so far? Let us know if you have any questions as well. The next question here is how to make a lasting impression. I
would say it's with the questions that you ask. Again, showing interest and staying interesting. It's very similar. I think networking and interviews are also very similar in the sense that when you have those last 5 minutes and the interviewer, the hiring manager, the recruiter says, do you have any questions for me? It should never be no. You should always have questions. But I always think about, what are other people asking and how could I ask very different questions? My goal is for the other person to say, whoa, I've never thought about that before. That's a great question. And it leaves them pondering once that interview or that chat or that networking call is over. They're like, man, Dean did his research, or Diana asked some really thoughtful questions. And I wonder if she joins our company or we work together or partner in the future, what other questions is she going to ask? And is she going to challenge the status quo? And is she really going to push things forward? So, really think about how you can ask really good, deep questions. Once you, again, what Dean was saying with sales, once you get enough information from the other person, think about, don't just ask normal questions. You can ask those questions in the beginning to break the ice, but as you're going through that conversation, especially towards the end, people are not going to remember what you said in the beginning or the middle. They'll remember what the last 5 to 10 minutes of the conversation were. So ask really deep, thoughtful questions that show that you did some more deeper level thinking than just the average questions that people ask.
I love that, the questions.
One of the things I talk about in a lot of my courses and a lot of my posts is an area I'm not an expert on, but I read a lot about it, and I watch courses in LinkedIn Library on emotional intelligence. Gemma Roberts' course on emotional intelligence is one I recommend all the time. And that is everything you just talked about, AJ, being aware, listening, asking good questions, showing care, follow up, looking people in the eye, and most importantly, listening. And those are courses, and that's a subject that I think can benefit you no matter what job you may have in your company, is the basics of emotional intelligence. And if you say you're going to do something for somebody, and if you have a conversation with somebody, you have to follow up. Don't ghost people. If you commit to something, make sure you do it. And those are the lasting impressions that you can make on people that are so important. And so we're giving a lot of tips today on courses to watch. And I think there's a clue there. A lot of great resources within the LinkedIn Learning Library that are immensely valuable for people. One of them also now being emotional intelligence.
And
Yeah,
Diana, Dean mentioned follow up, and I'd love if you're good with it. We can dive into that topic, because this is, if you're okay with it, this is one of those areas to me that matter the most, because the least amount of people do it. And I don't know, Diana or Dean, would love to hear your thoughts as well. But if you go out of your way, especially someone, let's say, reaches out on LinkedIn and they want to chat with you to ask for some advice, especially if you're kind of at the place where they want to be career-wise, job-wise, whatever it may be, and you give up 30 minutes of your time on a weeknight, weekend, we're all crazy busy, and you never get a thank you, and you also never hear from them again. That is just one of my biggest pet peeves, because you feel like it was just a waste of both of your time, and you feel like your advice was not heard, was not said. So I think such few people follow up, but it means so much, and it's also so easy to do. And if someone's giving up time out of their day, out of their night, out of their weekend to help, I promise you, they do want to hear from you. Maybe they don't have time for another call, but following up and staying in touch does not mean, hey, Dean, do you have an additional 30 minutes next week? It means in the next week, hey, Dean, thanks so much for your time last week. By the way, you told me to get a sales book to dive into my sales career. Guess what? Here's a picture of the Amazon screenshot I bought of the book. Or, hey, Diana, we spoke about getting more confidence in interviews, and you said to watch this LinkedIn learning course. I just watched it. Here are the top 3 tips. Hope you're having an amazing week. That's staying in touch. That's following up. You don't have to hop on another call every single week. And such few people follow up. So the few ones that do, they become very memorable. And you want to do everything in your power to connect them to those opportunities, to those people, to help and support them, versus the ones that don't, and you never hear from them for 6 months to a year. They reach back out when they need something. You're not as inclined to help and support them.
That's such great advice, AJ. Like from my days as a speaker as well, I find that very few people follow up. And I remember back in the day when I was speaking at a university in front of hundreds of students, only like one person followed up. And this person became my mentee. I mentored him. And I actually introduced him to kickstart his career in recruiting. Someone that I knew on LinkedIn, they created their first ever internship at a recruiting agency. And it's because of him following up. And I love that you said that it doesn't necessarily have to be another meeting or anything, but it's just acknowledging the advice that they took or what they learned from you to nurture that relationship further there. Dean, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I agree. You don't need an advanced degree from Harvard or the London Business School to learn how to follow up either. And it's sad. Most people don't follow up. And in sales, I mean, I talk about that all the time. I think I did pretty well in my career in sales because I showed up on time, I followed up, and I followed up on the commitments that I gave to people. And that's not rocket science. I don't need an advanced degree from a major business school to be able to do that. And that's how you overcome. I know somebody mentioned the imposter syndrome, and it's just doing these things that can differentiate you from everybody else. And follow up is one of the easiest ones to do.
And follow up.
And Dean, you mentioned differentiating yourself, and on the Final Round podcast, we talk about, what really sets people apart to help them advance past the final round in an interview, in life, in relationships with friends, networking, whatever it may be. And it's funny because people think that it's the big things, but it's not the big things. It's the little things that take the least amount of time, but the fewest amount of people do. So sending those thank you notes and following up and staying in touch and really showing that you care. And also even getting that call, that interview, that networking, meeting, whatever it may be. Did you send a templated outreach message, or was it so tailored to the point where Dean says, wow, AJ actually put in the time to watch my course or watch a few minutes of it, shared his favorite quote, his takeaway. He knows where I'm from, what I'm doing. And such few people do that, to the point where that's how you stand apart from your peers, from the competition, from others, and really get past the final round.
Yeah. Bingo.
That's such great advice, because a lot of the work I do as a coach is how do you stand out? How do you differentiate? How do you make a lasting impression? And I talk a lot about go above and beyond to gain that competitive edge, right? So part of it is either following up or doing that extra prep work, or asking these great questions that people felt like, okay, you've done your research, you know what you're talking about. One of my favorite questions from the event last week was one of the fellow instructor, Marielle Lagarde. She asked, what's your Mount Everest? And I love that question because no one actually asked me that question. And it really got me into more future mode of really thinking about my vision, my why. And I remember that because then I left feeling like, wow, like she really cared about my vision and where I'm heading and how can we best support each other. So thinking of those thoughtful questions can be a great way to make a lasting impression. One thing I want to add on in terms of making a great impression is I want to talk about the importance of body language and your tone of voice, like the eye contact, the warmth of smiling, your facial expressions, your posture. All of these will have an impact of how people feel or perceive you as well. So showcasing warmth is important. There's this book by Vanessa Van Edwards on, what's it called, Cues? And she talks about the formula for charismatic communication is the balance of competency and warmth. And warmth usually comes first, which is you don't have to say anything, but the way we show up of how we make each other feel, that gives a feeling that you are a charismatic communicator.
And I actually remember that Mount Everest question. And I was actually going to bring it up, but you just mentioned it. And it was a question where I'm like, wow, that's not just what's your goal for 2022. That's what's your goal for your career, for your life? What do you define as purpose? And I thought that's also a great icebreaker, is really getting people to think. And again, lasting impression. I'm like, whoa, that's a really good question. I'll remember that person. And one other quick networking tip that I would say that blew me away and caught my attention is, given that all three of us right here on the panel are content creators, people should follow and watch and listen to the content of the courses, and then use that in your outreach strategy, whether it's for sales or trying to get time with the person, networking, job search, whatever it may be. I made a LinkedIn post on a Friday saying the best time to network is Friday mornings because people are so excited about the weekend. There's usually less work going into the weekend and you're just in a better mood. There's usually fewer meetings. Someone reached out the following Friday and said, hey, AJ, not just I follow you, but I follow you and I saw your LinkedIn post about reaching out on Fridays. And here I am taking your advice to heart and reaching out on a Friday, and then kind of gave their pitch about time. And I was blown away. And I said, you know what? I've been saying no to networking calls because it's been a busy week. But I said, you know what? Let's chat over the weekend because I saw that you actually put in the time. So use this advice that we're sharing right now. And, you can use it back on us to, get to where you want to go and network and build and support each other.
Amazing, amazing. So I have one final question. If anyone here wants to share one final question or just comment on what your biggest takeaways are, we appreciate you. I see Amira is still here as well and supporting us. Thank you so much. So to wrap things off, what are your top 3, let's say, networking do's and don'ts?
AJ, that's right up your alley.
So I think the do's are just the opposite of, the don'ts are just the opposite of the do's. So I'll give three do's. You should network organically. Again, like we said earlier with the theme, do not make it transactional. Do not think, what could I give this other person? Just really try to support each other and build others. And the don't is, don't make it transactional. I would say the second one is just be yourself. Don't try to act like you're somebody that you're not. If I say I'm a sales expert and I love sales and, Dean's a sales expert, he can see right through me because maybe that's just not really my story. So really be yourself and don't be somebody that you're not. Of course, you can play the part and you can fake it till you make it to an extent, but you really should believe in your authentic story and tell yourself that you do belong. Even though everybody has imposter syndrome. I saw a comment, I think on the LinkedIn Live, in the comment section about imposter syndrome. I had imposter syndrome going to this event, but when I walked in, I reminded myself that I do belong here and I have a unique story to tell. So don't, let imposter syndrome take over and still go and say yes to those opportunities. Then I would say the last thing, and we just mentioned following up, but please do follow up, send those thank you notes, show that you care, and stay in touch. Because if you're networking and you don't do anything after the fact, it's just a waste of everybody's time. Continue that relationship, nurture that relationship. Don't ask for something now, but maybe in the future you will need something and that person is more inclined to help if you did follow up. So those are my 3 do's and don'ts, and I'll throw it over to Dean to finish us off.
Well, AJ, I think you nailed it. I mean, those are the tips that are so critically important. Just be yourself. And I talk about smiling, smile, say hello, be authentic, be genuine, be real, show interest. I mean, again, goes back to emotional intelligence. Those are my do's, and it's caring for others. And not every encounter you're going to have is going to be perfect, and not everything is going to be the right match. And just don't overthink this. Again, just be yourself. In my presentations, I talk all the time that I wasn't the smartest guy in the class. By far, there were so many people smarter than me. But what I did do is I showed up on time, I smiled, I said hello, I followed up, and I try to care for others. And I do send thank you notes. I'm old-fashioned. I still do it in written form. So it goes back to differentiating yourself. So AJ, great advice, great tips, and I'm just putting a little icing on the cake of what you just said.
Amazing. I love this. And I'm going to share my favorite 3 ABCs about networking that I always talk about is always be connecting, always be curious, and always be cultivating. These are my 3 favorite ABCs around relationship building. And one of my big don'ts that I always talk to clients about is don't ask for a favor before building trust and rapport. So meaning don't go ask someone to refer you for a job or an opportunity or introduce you so-and-so without building that trust and rapport. It is so, so important that you take the time to nurture that relationship. And one thing I want to add, like when it comes to a networking event that I find that it's really helpful if you do feel imposter syndrome or anxious, what I find helpful is either you find like a buddy, if you can find someone to go with, to attend with, introduce each other. Right? Be that hype person. Like AJ, you were really good with that. Like even though we just met, you were so good. It wasn't just about hyping, it's actually acknowledging other people. Or sometimes, you know, when people may not introduce themselves in a way that they want to highlight their credibility or their successes, you can be that person to acknowledge them so that other people get to know more about them as well. And that's a great way to build those relationships. And I noticed a few people did that night, and it really helped with the conversation to keep it going throughout the evening there.
Awesome tips.
Amazing. Let me see. Let's check in the chat room before we close things off here. We have some great comments from our audience. Dean, you're so down to earth and break things down to the simple components and see why you get the compliments on your honesty. Amazing. All right. And we have Jerry said, thank you for putting this together with 3 dynamic speakers, followed you for years, and now adding AJ and Dean to my list. Thank you all so much. Amazing. Thanks, AJ. Friday it is. Amazing. Yeah, Steven. Yeah, Steven's been following me quite some time. He's so good at following up. It can be simple as sending a genuine DM. It could be simple as that. Like, it doesn't have to be huge or anything, right? A simple DM. Like Steven actually sent me a voice message. Like when I was telling him that I'm coming to New York when I meet with them and he wasn't available, like he sent me a voice message. Actually a video, I believe. It was actually a video that I saw. And I was like, that was so kind. I did to personalize that message there. Personalization is key, right? Yeah, amazing. Great point. Be yourself. Awesome. Well, thank you. This was so fun. I hope you guys had fun. Thank you so much, AJ and Dean.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for inviting us.
And just for everybody out there, I was going to say, just know that, you know, Dean, myself, Diana, we didn't know each other a couple of days ago. And because we put ourselves out there, we overcame imposter syndrome. We went out of our way to meet each other. Then opportunities like this come about. So always be networking and stay interesting and stay interested.
That's amazing. So true. Great point.
Yeah. So to wrap things up, where can people find you?
I spend my time on LinkedIn. I post all the time on LinkedIn, and I'm regularly posting videos and content on LinkedIn. And that's my primary avenue for reaching me. D. Karrel at LinkedIn.
Perfect. And check out his latest course.
I would say, and just to add on to that, LinkedIn as well, always very active, obviously on LinkedIn and also on any social media at The Final Round or on our website at thefinalround.com.
Yep. And your podcast there. Amazing. Check out that course as well. And feel free to also check out my course on presenting with confidence. There's so many amazing courses out there that's coming out. So we really want to encourage you also to check out all the other courses that are out there. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you all had a great time, and feel free to follow up with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
All right. You take care. Bye.